Hi everyone, it's Ruby G.
And I'm Joff.
Welcome to Truth in Neurons.
The Idaho student murders case has sparked numerous alternate theories, examining gaps in the official narrative. While the authorities maintain that the 4 victims died from stab wounds inflicted by a single perpetrator, we're here to examine whether the initial crime scene evidence could support different scenarios before the investigation focused on the sole perpetrator knife attack theory.
The things that are being said are 100% not true. There's not drugs involved.
Well, the toxicology reports, right, they usually take 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes longer. But they might, I don't think they're going to be relevant in the actual manner or cause of death.
Is it true that people in that house have sold products?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
And you've bought from them, or other people have, or you guys like throw down
100%.
together?
Yep, all the above.
All the above. So like you would just like know to go there to get like product?
Well, like I said, I mean, they're your friends too. So you go over there after you get done with your homework, and you know it's a Thursday afternoon, but you want to have a couple drinks, and you maybe get a little fucked up, but not too fucked up. And so you're just gonna go, hang out with these girls, and maybe do a little bit, and drink a little bit, and play a couple beer games, be back by like midnight, right? And then on the weekends, if it was going to get obliterated, go over and just get obliterated.
Okay, it was
like we thought it was the OD, and it just made sense, and so we just kind of took that.
We thought it was OD'd. And then we hear like the whole stabbing part of it. Were you just like, wait, what?
Yeah, basically, yeah. And I mean, like, we had already heard about it too, and like, I know I personally, I just didn't want to believe it, right? Like, I wanted it to be an OD more than, these 4 kids just got stabbed to death, right?
So it's known to you, M and D, they sell drugs to the community. Like that's like that's known.
Yeah, there's some of the dealers here.
There's some of them.
Well, like they're like the dealers in town, is what I would say.
Okay, and then like
I would say most of the party drugs are coming through. We're coming through them.
Okay. Was Emma known to be acquaintances or cool with any of the victims?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You would never classify as anybody in the house as being like, hey, those are drug dealers? Would you ever say that? Would you ever be like, although those people are drug dealers? Or would you just say like those people are like the party? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, they don't. I mean, and that's what I was saying too. Like, they're more your friends than they are your dealers. They just happen to be your friends that have fun stuff that you can buy off them.
Okay. And then would it just be like that people would just hand them the money? And then,
or like shoot them a Venmo or something. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would you think that house had like all this like drugs in it, that somebody would be like, hey, we need to hit this house up. This house is loaded with, we can just like ransack it.
Not enough to warrant like a stabbing, but enough to take 4 of them overdosing without question, if that makes sense.
So like are you saying that somebody could try to make something look like something, but it's really something else?
What I'm saying is like enough was going in and or out of there that it did not surprise any of us that they could have gotten a bad batch in as quickly as a matter of a few days or a week, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. So like basically they had enough on hand that if they did too much, they could OD.
100%, yeah. Like we totally saw that as plausible. Like they maybe bought an 8-ball or something like that, and that was laced with fent, and that's what got them. Right. Definitely, totally, like 100%. We like, yep, I see that happening. Right.
At that time before, I just kind of thought they were going to get him. It was some kid. He went and he shot up the house or something, and they got him. He's walking down the street, and I just kept waiting for the news to say they've arrested somebody.
In Moscow, Idaho, 4 University of Idaho students were found dead in a home near campus Sunday.
Across the country at the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho, another shelter-in-place order Sunday after 4 students were found shot to death in a home near campus.
The most psychologically and institutionally plausible hypothesis for why law enforcement would cover up gunshot deaths and reframe them as knife attacks involves multiple intersecting factors that prioritize institutional protection over factual accuracy. Despite the counterintuitive reality that gunshot deaths would actually be less traumatizing for families and communities than prolonged knife torture.
If the victims were killed with firearms, this immediately raises questions about how weapons entered the scene, where they came from, and whether they were legally obtained. More critically for law enforcement, gunshot deaths in a college town suggest either organised criminal activity, drug-related violence, or weapons trafficking, all of which would represent massive investigative failures for local police who have been patrolling this exact area and these exact social networks. The body cam footage showing the same task force officers engaging in bullying behaviour towards students just months before, combined with evidence that some of these same officers may have been circling the King Road house that night of the murders, this creates a scenario where gunshot deaths would expose not just investigative incompetence, but potential direct involvement or criminal negligence by law enforcement personnel.
Knife attacks can be framed as random violence by a disturbed individual, something that just happens and requires no broader systemic examination. Gunshot deaths, particularly multiple executions in a controlled environment, demand investigation into weapons sources, criminal networks, and institutional failures that allowed such violence to occur under police watch. For a small town police department suddenly under international scrutiny, the knife narrative provides a contained story that doesn't implicate broader failures of drug enforcement, weapons monitoring, or organised crime oversight. The lone wolf with a knife theory protects everyone in the institutional chain from uncomfortable questions about what they knew, when they knew it, and why they failed to prevent what may have been a predictable escalation of criminal activity they were already aware of.
So, the imperative to protect the university at all cost. Gunshot deaths in what appeared to be an organised hit would destroy the university's carefully cultivated image and potentially reveal drug trafficking, organised criminal activity, or other illegal enterprises operating within Greek life and student social networks. Now, Daddy Green wouldn't be happy if that was discovered.
Nope.
The economic implications alone, lost enrolment, destroyed reputation, federal investigation into campus security failures, that creates enormous pressure to reframe the deaths as random violence rather than systemic criminal activity. A knife attack by an outsider preserves the narrative that the university is fundamentally safe and that this was an abhorrent tragedy rather than a symptom of deeper institutional rot.
While gunshots would indeed be less traumatizing than imagining prolonged knife torture, the community psychology around gun violence versus knife violence operates differently. Gun deaths imply broader societal failures, systemic violence, and ongoing danger from criminal networks that remain active. Knife deaths can be psychologically contained as the actions of a single disturbed individual who has been caught, making the community safe again. Gun violence suggests that the criminal infrastructure remains intact and could strike again, creating lasting fear and demanding systemic changes that local institutions are unprepared to make.
So let's look at federal investigation. Multiple gunshot deaths with evidence of organised criminal activity would likely trigger federal involvement if it wasn't already underway with a parallel investigation. Weapons tracing, DEA drug network investigations, FBI organised crime task force like the OCDETF. Local institutions lose control of the narrative and face federal oversight that could expose decades of institutional failures, corruption, or willful blindness to criminal activity. The knife narrative keeps a case local, manageable, and controllable within existing institutional structures that can protect themselves and their reputations.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about the most brutal truth. Let's get brutal.
Brutal.
The cover-up hypothesis isn't about protecting families from trauma. It's about protecting institutions from accountability. If these deaths resulted from gunshot wounds delivered in what appears to be an organised execution, it would expose that local law enforcement, university administration, and community leaders had allowed a criminal infrastructure to develop that made such violence not just possible, but perhaps inevitable. The knife narrative allows everyone to claim this was unforeseeable tragedy rather than predictable consequence of institutional failures.
The psychological reality is that families and communities are often stronger and more resilient than institutions give them credit for, and they deserve the truth, regardless of how uncomfortable that truth makes the people and the organisations who failed to protect their loved ones. The knife narrative serves institutional self-preservation at the expense of justice, accountability, and genuine community healing that can only come from honest reckoning with what actually occurred and why it was allowed to happen.
The families and community are being denied the truth, not to protect them from additional pain, but to protect institutions from the consequences of their failures, negligence, and possible complicity in creating the conditions that made these deaths possible. That's all for today's episode of Truth and Neurons. If you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on the ethics of media commentary in high-profile cases. Until next time, keep thinking critically and questioning everything. Cheers, bye.